Welcome to the Ferris Love Podcast. Here we explore spiritual insights and practical strategies to help you cultivate a family life rooted in beautiful, self-giving love. Join us as we invite experts to share uplifting perspectives and actionable advice for navigating the joys and challenges of modern family dynamics. Welcome back to the Ferris Love Podcast. Today, I'm excited to welcome back Doug Hinderer, licensed marriage and family therapist and host of the relevant radio show, Marriage Unhindered. Doug is going to speak to us about what it's like to be sacrificial in your marriage, especially when it comes to sacrificial love. So Doug, thank you so much for joining us again on the show.
It's always a pleasure to be here, Mary Grace. Thanks for having me.
So last time we had you on the show, we were able to talk about your new book, Rekindled Hearts, old book now. I guess it's been out for about a year now, almost, coming up. Yeah.
I still don't know if anybody has bought it, but it's still available for sure. They've not sold out. So,
Well, we're so happy that you're coming back to us to talk a little bit more in depth about sacrificial love. So we're just going to dive right in and just kind of talk about the ideas of love in modern culture. And, we have this idea that, people tend to be a little more self-centered, especially within their marriages. And they think, 50-50 marriage, should be like, you should give, I should give the same amount. It should be equal.
Yeah.
And just what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really bad idea, this 50-50 idea. And for two reasons. I think first is it's got to be 100%, 100%. I mean, you've got to be 100% in, and I wouldn't want to marry somebody who says, I promise you, I'm going to give you half of my effort. Yeah. I'm going to put in half an effort every day to make you happy. That's just a losing proposition, right? So it's got to be 100%, 100%. And the other reason why that's bad is it implies a certain scorekeeping. Like, I'm going to measure my contributions against yours so that it's even. Scorekeeping always ends up badly because I always think I'm getting the worst end of the deal. Right? We never keep score against people who are in worse shape than we are, right? So I think it's just a bad idea all the way around. It's 100%. You got to be 100% in.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that scorekeeping. How do you shift that mindset from what am I getting out of this, or what do you give to me that I then can return to you equally? How do you shift that to what am I getting versus what am I giving?
Yeah. I mean, that mindset stems from, I think, the vice of pride, right? From the sin of pride. Like, what am I getting? It's about me. It's about my happiness, et cetera. Right? Mm-hmm. Well, the virtue contrary to pride is love. So, and I think the focus needs to be on how well am I loving, right? Mm-hmm. And then the ultimate measure of that is agape love, right? Mm-hmm. There's different kinds of love. There's loves of friendship and kindness, and there's physical love. And then there's agape love, which is this unconditional, sacrificial love. Jesus is our role model for what that's all about. The Blessed Mother, of course, St. Joseph, of course, are role models for what agape love is all about. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you're struggling with pride, if you're struggling with scorekeeping, prayer is the place to go. And then to pray for the virtue of love, right? And to score yourself, I mean, each day, I think, on how well did I do of putting my spouse's needs first and foremost in the choices that I made today? And did I take good care of my spouse's heart today? Mm-hmm. And did I do little acts of kindness today? Mm-hmm. And then that helps you get past. And the first part is just, realizing that this selfish orientation is going to end in disaster. And selfish people always end up very unhappy because you never get everything you want. Mm. But giving people sacrificial, tend to be very happy in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, so for those people who are giving and tend to give a lot, like people-pleasing, people-pleasing people who, tend to give too much and then they feel resentful afterwards. How do you how do you shift that, from... Or what do you do if you're that kind of person who just gives, and then feels kind of this, emptiness, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I think, so this idea of people pleasing comes generally from a place of fear. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid of what you might say about me. I'm afraid you may not like me. I'm afraid you may say something bad about me to others. So from fear, I'm going to do everything I can do to please you. Well, there's no fear in love, right? So if you come from a place of love, there shouldn't be any fear there, right? And love is giving without counting the cost. And love is, listen, Jesus loved the people who killed him.
Yeah.
So to the people pleasing thing, just appreciate it comes from a fear, and I shouldn't go through life with fear. And I should do what is good and right. And I'll let you decide if you like me or not. That's up to you. And I'm not going to try to force you to like me by being somebody who I'm not, right?
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, that's the deal. But sacrificial love is what we're called to do, and that's the opposite of fear-based. That's just love-based and giving-based, and that's where real joy comes from, right? It's giving, and our Lord was pretty clear, right? Give without your right hand knowing what your left hand is doing. Okay, so give without worrying about being seen or judged or rewarded for it. Just give sacrificially and give lovingly, and pray for that grace that you can develop that virtue to a higher degree throughout the course of your marriage, right? And listen, it's been 45 years for my wife and I. And,
Congrats.
I'm still learning how to do it better. I'm still learning how to be more loving, more sacrificial, less concerned about getting rewarded for my great kindness that I exude every day. It's a lifelong journey.
And that's great too. I mean, just a side note, why it's so great to have you have your radio show and everything, because it's nice to hear, as a young woman who's married just 2 years almost. So it's nice to hear the work is in progress for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's not like you get it all figured out right off the bat, or 30 years in or whatever,
Yeah, right. And it will always be a journey as long as you still have some defects, and we will have defects up until the day we die, and hopefully less of them, and the defects won't be as large, right? But we're always a little selfish. We're always a little impatient. We're always, a little cranky, and we work on it, and we work on it together as a couple, and we get better. Hopefully.
Yeah. And what would you say for a couple, let's say, who has one person who is sacrificial, like they really know their vocation and they desire to love their spouse fully and sacrifice for them, and then the other who doesn't recognize that beauty of that love, and who just kind of takes advantage of it?
Yeah, that's one of the greatest challenges I run into as a therapist is I'll get a call from either husband or wife. Usually it's the wife, probably 80% of the time, 75% of the time, who says, I really want to fix the marriage. I want to come for counseling, and my husband won't come. He doesn't want to work on it. Right? And what a heartbreaker that is, right? That you get one of the spouses like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm happy. I get fed, and I have a TV to watch. And so that's a really tough thing. And I think this is where we get into it. I talk about it a little bit on my show, but this idea of white martyrdom. And every marriage is going to contain suffering, some a little, some a lot, and some marriages in God's infinite design that we don't understand this side of the veil. Some people are going to suffer a lot in their marriage, right? And so the idea is to look at suffering not as a bad thing or something to be avoided, but as something to be embraced and to love and to be united with Christ on his cross. And every marriage brings a cross with it, or multiple crosses, because you married somebody with multiple defects, as my wife did, right? And so she gets lots of opportunities to practice sacrificial love. But that's a good thing, right? I think it was John Paul II who wrote that Christ did not come to this earth to remove suffering. He came to redeem it. He came to share it. And so there's going to be suffering in our marriage. Offer it up, sanctify it, use it as a means to grow closer to our Lord, and then be grateful that we have an opportunity to participate in his suffering and his salvific love. Now, much easier said than done, of course, right? Nobody chooses suffering. But that's what we're called to do. And so where do you get the strength to do that, right? Well, you get the strength in the sacraments, especially confession and Holy Eucharist, and in having a prayer life, right? And setting some time aside each day to feel free to complain to our Lord. Lord, this is not working. This is not what I want. You got to help me here. And he will.
And just thinking about, as I'm going to go back to my experience only because it's new and fresh and it's nice to, so when you think of just the little things of husbands and wives men are very different from women, and considering maybe sacrifices that men have to make for their wives, and then the sacrifices that wives have to make for their husbands.
Yeah.
What are some common, maybe they're not common, I don't know, because marriages are different, but some common sacrifices that a husband has to make for his wife or a wife that maybe it's harder for the other to accept or to understand? And then how can we better accept that sacrifice?
Yeah. So each marriage is different and each set of sacrifices is different. But ultimately, by definition of the word sacrifice, I've got to deny myself something that I want, right? And so what women want and what men want are often different, right? One of the areas of sacrifice that's so important, I think, now in a marital harmony is to say no to the screens. Put the phone down. Get rid of that phone when we're together. And we tend to, for different reasons, but we tend to, both husbands and wives tend to get into those screens. And it's a very exclusive thing. When I'm on that screen, I can't see you. I'm not interacting with anybody but that screen. So get rid of the screens. I think that's a huge sacrifice for most people because, how many hours do we spend looking at those screens in the course of the day? I think that's a huge thing. I think the other sacrifice is just, we often treat total strangers better than we do our spouse, right? We're often, you're often more polite to the cashier at the grocery store than you are when you get home and ask your spouse to help you unload the groceries. And so we've got a saying in my business that in marriage, the little things are really big. Okay. And so part of the sacrifice, I think, is to focus on what are some of the little things I can do to bring some joy into your life. And that things like please and thank you, like opening car doors, like emptying the dishwasher, like, loading the dishwasher, whatever, folding the laundry. So the part of the sacrifice is to stop thinking as much about me and a little bit more about you and what you need and what I can do to help.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking of just, the little sacrifices. And I know St. Jose Maria, I'm not going to phrase this correctly, but he talks about, someone's defects is, in a sense, your sanctification, like finding those little, those flaws can actually help sanctify you. And so with that mindset, how can we view that? And then that can help us manage conflicts within our marriage.
Yeah. I mean, viewing your spouse's defects as gifts from God changes everything, right? And here's the deal. Virtue is only acquired at the end of suffering. There's no virtue you can acquire that doesn't have suffering before you acquire it, right? So if you want to acquire the virtue of patience, well, you got to be irritated standing in the long line at the grocery store that isn't moving because some little old lady is paying in pennies, or you're stuck in traffic, right? And so suffering is what gives us virtue, and virtue is what gets us into heaven. So in a very real way, our defects are gifts from God for our holiness. Right? And so the idea is, and here's the goal. Good luck getting there before you're dead. But I think the goal needs to be to learn to love our spouse's defects as much as we love our spouse's virtues. And if we can love those defects as wonderful gifts from God, then it's a whole lot easier to be patient when our spouse is cranky, or had a bad day and is short-tempered, or isn't being as nice to me as I'd like, or walked right past that pair of socks on the floor 4 times and didn't pick it up and throw it in the closet. Right? All of a sudden, these become wonderful gifts that help us grow in virtue. And so if we look at marriage as not something God created for our happiness, but it's something he created for our holiness. That these become wonderful gifts to grow in holiness. So if our focus is holiness, everything works out really well. And here's the little secret that not many people know. Happiness is the reward for holiness. Holy people are very happy people. And so if the focus is on holiness, happiness comes. If the focus is on happiness, you don't get happy and you don't get holy. So there you go.
That's great. That's a great little tidbit there.
There you go.
Yeah. So we've got, the husband and the wife, but now you have kids involved in the picture, and just, the ideal is to put your spouse first. What does that look like when, you have children that need things, you have children at young ages, little kids. I mean, I have a 7-month-old right now, and, prioritizing. Thank you.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's great. And it's a matter of, prioritizing my husband. So how do you go about doing that?
Right. And here's the thing that perhaps you've noticed, and perhaps your husband has noticed too, because the research is pretty clear that marital happiness and satisfaction goes down after the baby is born for sometimes up to 2 years, right? So why is that? Because you've just created this unbelievable human being, and you're just in awe that you were able to do this thing, and you love it so totally. Infants are the epitome of what a selfish human being is. They want what they want when they want it, and they don't care if you're trying to sleep. They don't care if you got a headache. They don't care. I want to be fed now. I want my diaper changed now. I want to be held now. And so what ends up suffering a lot in this is the husbands. The husbands end up feeling pretty lonely. You've known that baby for 9 months before it even breathed. And that baby came into this world bonded to you, and you bonded to it unbelievably tightly. To the husband, it's a total stranger. And to the baby, the husband is a total stranger. I don't know who you are. Maybe I know your voice, maybe a little bit, maybe I don't know. But when I'm upset, I don't want you. You're a stranger. I want my mother, because I've listened to her heartbeat for 9 months. And right. And so dad's the outsider in this thing. And so husbands end up feeling lonely pretty easily after the baby is born. And so there's an adjustment. So I think it really puts a little more pressure on the wives to make sure that they're making one-on-one time for their husbands, which is tough because you're exhausted. I mean, you're the one getting up at 2 a.m. and not getting naps, and maybe you're still working, or part-time, or so it's crazy. So it really is important, I think, for the wife to realize that it's particularly difficult on the husband for that initial period, especially that first year. And, get a sitter once in a while, right? Or whatever. Or, if you get the baby on a routine and when naps, you're like, okay, sweetheart, this time for us to go have a glass of wine, or to go, let's have some appetizers. Let's go talk to each other, right? So those are my thoughts there. You got to nurture that love. Yeah. And here's the other thing. Children are the silent killer of many marriages if you prioritize them over your spouse. The children will kill your marriage because you're no longer feeding the marriage because you're feeding the children. And it's probably the most common complaint I hear is especially couples who come to see me after 25, 30 years of marriage, is that we spent all of our time raising our kids. We didn't pay attention to each other. Now we don't know who we are, and the kids are gone, and we're left with each other, and we're not sure how that's going. So do not let your children, as much as you love them, get between you and your spouse.
Yeah, and just from what I've noticed with my husband too, as women who, we're tired and exhausted with the baby and all that stuff, but in the end, if we give to our husbands, they actually then give more to us after that. So
funny how that
works out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how can a couple distinguish between, you mentioned like 25 years later and all of a sudden it's like, wait, what on earth? How can a couple distinguish between kind of a season of dryness in their marriage versus like, okay, a situation where this is going to be like, we have to sacrifice for this, and this is, choosing the love. I think, in a season of dryness, it's like, oh, well, I don't know if he loves me anymore, all those things. But then actually having that choice to say, actually, no, I love him. I'm going to continue.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And seasons of dryness come in everything, right? I mean, You love your job. You don't love your job. You get along well with your parents. You don't get along. So that's a normal thing. But it can also be a warning flag that, okay, we're off the path a little bit, right? So the number one thing is you got to talk about it, right? So if the dryness lasts for more than, I don't know, a week or two, if you're like, man, I'm just not getting it, you need to talk about it, or you need to pray about it. It's okay, Lord, why am I feeling so dry? Well, because my husband isn't doing this thing I need him to do, or I'm not feeling well loved by him, or protected, or whatever. And then you have the conversation. Sweetheart, I'm not feeling well loved by you right now because you're so focused on work. You come home, we eat, and then you go into your office and you start working again, and you're on the computer. I'd like to, So you need to talk about it and say, okay, I'm having a problem. What can we do to get back to where we used to be? Right? So I think that's a really important thing. So, and that's the deal. I mean, ultimately, it's the willingness to talk about what's going on, especially when things aren't going all that well. And if you can do that without getting defensive, then it's a good thing. Then you get better.
Yeah. And we mentioned earlier about how men are kind of the ones that, not all the time, but are the ones that tend to not desire to fix it. Like the women come first saying, hey, let's fix this. Let's figure this out. Right. What would you say to a couple that's on this point where they're feeling dry, but they're feeling that love is no longer there? Let's say they've experienced some, I don't know, traumatic family event or something. And, someone is like, we need to fix this. The other one's not. What would you recommend that they can, I guess not like tap into, but shoot,
No.
Yeah.
So in fact, I was thinking about this morning at 3 a.m. I have a bad brain. So, but on my show on Fridays, usually on Fridays, I end the show with my Friday rant, where I get upset about something and I rant about it for about 5 minutes. And so, problem is, I get worked up when I rant, and so today is Friday, where we're recording this. I'm not going to do a rant today because I've got a guest on, but I'm thinking about next Friday. And because what's happened is, I got a call from a guy this week who said his wife served him with divorce papers, and he didn't see it coming. I'm like, really? She's that upset you didn't see it coming? So no, I mean, for years she's been wanting to go to counseling, and I'm like, no, we don't need counseling. We'll work it out. He said, so I think we need to start counseling. I'm like, you're an idiot. It's probably too late. Once she's decided she's done with you, now you want to try to fix it? So the most important thing I could say to anybody is, if your spouse shows up and says, we need counseling, you've got just one answer. Yes, let's start tomorrow. They're not, sorry, I'm starting to rant, but
hey, you got to get it out on Friday.
Yeah, I'm rehearsing for Friday.
Yeah.
But, your spouse isn't sitting there thinking, boy, we need to do something exciting and really pleasurable on date night. Let's go to counseling so I can pour my heart out to a total stranger and I can cry in his office. That's not a date. That's not something you do for fun. That's something you only do when it's like, man, this is serious, right? So I think the most important thing is, if your spouse says, I'm not feeling good about this, you need to pay close attention and get some professional help. There's great therapists out there. The reason men are reluctant to ask for help is a major fear in men is the fear of failure, which is why we're so competitive in sports and academics and at work, etc. Men are so competitive, right? And to say I need help to fix my marriage is to admit failure. And men will go to great lengths not to admit failure, right up until the point that they find themselves divorced and living in a one-bedroom apartment, right? So get rid of that fear. Stop being afraid. If you're a real man, stop being afraid. Go get the help you need, right? So.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any other final words of wisdom for our couples in the sense of this, in the idea of sacrificial love and just choosing the other, even in the midst of difficulties and challenges?
Yeah, marriage is this wonderful, wonderful, beautiful, frustrating gift from God, and in a lot of ways, it's the best of times and it's the worst of times, right? To be united irrevocably with another human being that you're going to build a life with and bring new human beings into the world with and tackle this world with, it's an unbelievably wonderful, beautiful adventure. But it's hard because of original sin. Now we come into this world with defects and challenges and concupiscence, and there's these 7 deadly sins that keep popping up, and it's hard work, but it is worth it. It is so worth it, and it's God's plan. He invented it for our holiness, and if we keep I guess that's what I'd summarize. If you focus on marriage as your path to holiness, you're going to do just fine, even when it becomes difficult, which it will at some point. So there you go.
Excellent. Thank you. And Doug, last time we spoke about your book, Rekindled Hearts, and that was, going into suffering in marriage. But is there anything else new that you've been working on that you'd like to share with our audience?
You know what? All of my effort these days have been going on to the radio show, right? So Marriage Unhindered, relevant radio, Monday through Friday, 5 to 6 p.m. Central Time. Yeah. And I think we're starting to build some momentum there. Listenership is up, and have some wonderful guests on, et cetera. And so I would just encourage people to tune in and call in. And I think I'm very proud of the content, and it's a good blend of theology and science. And so what does the latest research show us about what makes for good marriages? And what does our faith teach us? We kind of blend the two. So that's the greatest thing. I've got like a half a dozen books in my brain. I don't know that they'll ever get out of there and onto a piece of paper, but we'll see what life brings.
Well, hey, and listen to Friday's rant, and have good content to listen to.
At least I feel better after I rant on a
I'm
Friday.
sure people love it. Yeah.
It could be. Yeah.
It's great. Thank you so much, Doug, for sharing your expertise again with us on
It's good
marriage.
to see you, Mary Grace.
It's so awesome to have you.
Congratulations on that baby.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ferris Love Podcast. In 2026, we continue to share the devotion to Mary, Mother of Ferris Love. If you like what you heard on today's show, please visit our website at ferrislovefamilyproject.org, where you can find additional podcasts and other resources for families. Be sure to also check us out on social media at Ferris Love Project. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on an episode soon.